Yeah, hi guys, I just want to talk about my unbreakable X-Maxx shell. Let's just move all of these a little bit because they're in the way. I will compare it to the other shells and see my opinions on them. But I just want to start with this unbreakable shell. So, also forgot to mention, this shell, once it gets dirty, it stays dirty. I mean, you can clean it, but it'll always look cheap and tacky compared to the rest of the other shells. Nothing particularly wrong with that, but if you want a car that's impressive and it looks nice when you go out to race it around, I would definitely have a Proline or an original X-Maxx shell just around for the looks, because this thing is not a looker, never will be. It's not built for that. It's just literally built for pure bashing. First problem I had was initially buying it. So about 130 quid. Bearing in mind you still need to put your own supports into this shell, so by the time you finish spending on it, it's close to 200 quid for one of these shells. Unless you're going to take your supports out of your old X-Maxx shell, which you can do, it's your choice. I tried to buy two of these to save on postage, and because they're coming from Russia, these unbreakable shells, it didn't work out, and the guy basically sent them economy postage. Not a clue why. I'm not going to go into depth into it, but I didn't save any money by the end of it, and it took longer to get here. And by taking longer to get here, it's 2 months. I ended up destroying my X-Maxx shell in the process. At this point, I wasn't really jumping the car at all. It wasn't something that I considered doing. Not yet, because it was still brand new. I'd been jumping lightly, but nothing excessive. Nothing that would destroy the car. So anyways, once it came, didn't get any stickers that were promised at all. No stickers at all. So that was kind of annoying as well. And because this plastic can flex, I had some issues with this plastic. So not only is it smaller than the original one, which is this one here. You're probably not going to be able to see on camera. These shells are both quite dirty. But it is smaller, this shell. It's just smaller. Because it's smaller, the supports don't sit where they should sit. So I followed the back half. I started from here because you've got the indents. I had to follow them basically to get this to sit right. I started from here, so I've done 4 holes. The centre section, which I had to make bigger depending on how much space this little clip in here needed. Once I'd done that, my next step was to drill 2 holes up here. And they're not very clean holes. I'll explain that in a minute as to why they're not clean. The supports and the front mount, which again, you're not really going to see it, but I didn't follow the mount holes for the screws. I'll show you in detail in a second, but the reason why this shell was done the way I've done it is because basically I started trying to put this to the holes that were on this shell already, and then realised that I technically couldn't because everything shrunk down. My mate basically done what I did, followed it through, put all the holes where he wanted them to be, or where they should be in a sense, and snapped his supports down the middle, which are very, very expensive if you keep breaking them. I think it's like a pack for the front and back clips, it's like 20 quid and then 15 quid from the midsection. When you snap one of them, that's another load of 15 or 26 or 27 pound on top. So it gets expensive. And it was all because this shell came up small during the mould. I think I'd rather it have come up big than small, in fairness, because I could just cut it down. So yeah, he broke his supports because of that, but my one just looks messy because I had to give it more slack. I just didn't want it breaking my supports because of the tightness. Anyways, that's the mounts and supports and all the rest of that rubbish. I'll show you one quick, as you can see it. Let's ignore the mud on here. Can you see where I've done my holes? They look like they're on a slant, but it's because that's where the supports wanted to sit. And I followed everything all the way down here. I just done it so there was no tension. There was no me squeezing these midsections to get it to sit in there correctly. I just done it straight off where it's supposed to sit. Anyway, so that's the whole process. I had to do 2 grommets here as well, just to stop the bolts from coming through, because they do come through. It's just a nasty position. Again, it's down to manufacturing process and all the rest of that. Durability wise, if I really wanted to, I could trash one of these shells. I mean, I'd have to put my car through some abuse, but if I wanted to, I could finish this shell completely clean off. But you'd have to be so reckless. I mean, some of the jumps I'm doing, they do some damage to the shell. So, durability wise, yeah, I would say 10 out of 10, because you can only make something so durable, in all honesty. Some of the jumps I've done, I've got bits of my shell that are like, you can't really bend that out once it's bent. I'll have to heat it up just to get that bend out of it. Problem is, when you heat this plastic up, it tends to shrink, warp. As I said, there's a limit to its durability, and it doesn't really say that in its listing. They just say 1 year warranty, and I wouldn't want to test that warranty. I'm just saying, just pointing out to you guys. In terms of how it compares to the original shell, just in general use, it's the price. I mean, say for example, I bought one of these for 50 quid versus that for 100. I could buy 2 of these shells versus that. And don't get me wrong, you'll trash this shell, but if you're only trashing it, say once every 6 months or once a year, then I don't know if I could justify buying an unbreakable shell. Comes down to how hard you want to bash the car. If you want to take the car off some stupid jumps like I've been doing, then go, by all means go for it. But I don't recommend it, because the cost of breaking other parts is expensive. The other thing I've got on here is a roll cage. So my blue shell I've adapted here, as you can see on the back, for a roll cage. And that roll cage has also been through hell. But if you're not jumping the car, you want something that's not going to keep getting chewed up, I would pick the Proline shell and buy a roll cage. They're what, 70 quid on eBay roughly. Roll cage just goes straight over. It gives it a real beastly look, and if you flip your car, you're landing on the roll cage, which can take some abuse. I mean, if it slides across the concrete, it's usually okay. I mean, it looks no worse than this shell, but because it's a roll cage, your car still looks clean, mint, brand new almost, and the roll cage takes the abuse, which I'd rather. When you work out the cost of buying the shell and the roll cage and the supports, it's the same price as doing one of these. Let me just get the roll cage quick. Right, so I've got the roll cage. This has lights as well. I'll be posting a video about this soon, about the lights, but I've taken them out for now because, again, if you're going to rough and tumble this, it takes some abuse. But give me an example of what kind of damage to expect. This has hit the concrete many, I've even done jumps in this many of times, and as you can see, it's not really taking any damage. It's just really dirty. So it does have some roughing on it, but I mean, overall, there's hardly any damage to it. I've had a few bits there where I've had my lights and I've had to cable tie and stuff, and I've got some dirty bolts and things. But yeah, I still prefer the roll cage over the unbreakable shell. Let's put that to one side. Right, so Proline shell, it's very soft, very soft, and flexible. But you couldn't really, you could do that with the original X-Maxx shell, but it wouldn't like it. You get creases, crumples. Oh, flash has just gone off because my battery's low. It just, overall, it can take a bit more of a beating. You don't get the screws popping through your shell like you do with the original one as easy. It still happens, but just you'd have to really abuse the, just to hell that shell, and then you'll get something popping out. My original shell has seen better days. That has seen better days. I mean, yeah, you could use it, but it pops off every 5 seconds, and yeah, it's not good. All of these bolts always pop out. They've popped out in every single section. Not great shells in terms of durability or doing anything with. You don't even want to roll your car with this shell because it will destroy it. Or even self-right the car with this shell. You can forget it. Just don't even bother. Keep this as like your good shell. Keep on a shelf and showcase the car because it takes a beating and it doesn't do it very well. It's very crunchy and it's horrible. It's a horrible shell. Yeah, so if you like to self-right your car as well, in fact, actually, that's another feature that destroys shells. It's not a very good way to self-right your car, I don't think. The option's there if you need to do it, but I personally wouldn't do it without a roll cage on, as one. The problem is with doing that with roll cages, it's very hard to self-right your car with a roll cage on, unless you're running 4S with original tyres, and you can get away with it. With this shell, again, it's still not even easy to self-right with this shell, but it has the advantage of not getting destroyed. So, my opinion on this shell, I would give this probably 8.5 out of 10, but I would give it a 7 out of 10 because of customer experience with dealing with the seller of these. Proline shell, I would give about a 9 out of 10. Obviously it misses that one because of durability, but I mean it's plastic. I mean, how much is it going to really take? So it gets a 9. With the roll cage, it's I'd say 9.5 because the roll cage has its flaws, but they're nowhere near to the scale of this, I don't think. But yeah, that's that. And as for the original shell, I would say probably a 7, maybe a 6. It looks the part, it makes the car look beefy, but it just can't withstand any durability, any sort of damage that tests its durability in the slightest. One or two small cracks, and that is it. It just branches out from there and becomes a big issue. Whereas the Proline, I've got damage on this Proline on the back, and I've done some crazy stuff with this. One of the things I must suggest you do though on all 3 of these shells, all 3 of them, is cut them down. Do not have them any longer than they need to be, basically the point. I think even that's probably slightly too long. Because when you wheelie the car, it catches the bottom and it basically does that to your shell. Even to the original that has the plastic bar on the top here, still not worth it. So I would cut this down. First thing I would do on any X-Maxx shell, even to new buyers, cut this back bit down. And even the sides, I've cut the sides down on all my shells, because if the car takes a hit on the roof, it squishes the shell down to the car, and the part that gives way on these shells is always going to be the corners. It just blows them out when it gets squished down, and then you end up with your whole shell coming to pieces. So must cut this side bit down. Just cut it down so it's not against the plastic when you actually put the shell on. It'll be fine. Same with the back. I don't think there's any other bits on here I need to suggest apart from the washers on the original shell, which if you own an X-Maxx you already know about that. It's not something I need to tell you about. Yeah, I mean that's literally it. I got longer bolts on the aftermarket shell and on this shell, so you can see them there. It does help sometimes because there's not much thread in the plastic. You know, you can't really get a good grip on bolting them in. So that's the only other thing I can suggest. But that's mainly just for the back end. It's not really so much the front. Whichever shell you decide to get, just have fun. That's all I can suggest. And if you jump in, roll cage or unbreakable shell. If you're just casually racing it around and you're not really going to flip the car, but just in case you do, I'd say Proline. Original shell just as a show shell, that's it. I will be doing a upgrades video on my X-Maxx soon when I finish getting all the bits. It's already fully modded, so it's not really fair to say upgrades. It's more of a replacement parts. But yeah, there's your X-Maxx shells.